Welcome to Love and Trauma, the real deal. I'm Danielle Sebastian, best-selling author, coach, and yes, I've been through the marriage trenches myself. This show is all about how to actually deal with trauma in relationships and make it work without losing your mind. If you're ready for honest talk, no fluff, and tools that cut through the noise, tune in because let's face it, love can be a bit of a mess, but it's a mess worth figuring out. This is Love and Trauma, the real deal.
If you're married to someone who carries childhood trauma, there's a very specific kind of exhaustion that's hard to explain to anyone else. You guys, it's not just being tired, it's the mental exhaustion of constantly thinking, the emotional exhaustion of monitoring your tone, timing, and mood, the nervous system exhaustion of always wondering what might set things off. And the hardest part is this: you weren't prepared for this version of marriage. No one told you that loving someone with trauma could mean walking on eggshells in your own home. No one prepared you for how lonely it can feel to love so deeply and yet still feel so disconnected. And no one warned you that you might slowly lose pieces of yourself trying to keep everything from falling apart. If this resonates, I want you to hear this right away. You are not weak. You are not failing. And you are not imagining how heavy this feels. So today's episode isn't about fixing your partner. And it's not really about blaming trauma either. This episode is about you, about naming the invisible load that you've been carrying, and about how understanding why you feel so exhausted, even when you're doing everything you know how to do. And you guys, this is only part one of a three-part series where we're going to get honest about trauma, marriage, and what it takes to find your way back to connection without losing yourself in the process. And I'm so excited because this series is going to culminate in a powerful conversation with Dr. Kelly Flanagan. He's a clinical psychologist whose work has helped so many couples understand why they get triggered and how to find their way back to each other. And he has a brand new book coming out I am so excited about. It's called The Road Less Triggered, and it's coming out this month. So in our interview, we're going to talk deeply about trauma, nervous systems, and what actually helps couples move from protection back into connection. But before we get there, you guys, we have to start here. Because before anything can change, you need language for what you're living in. Okay, so let's take a deep breath. Let your shoulders drop if you can. You don't need to solve anything today. You just need to feel seen. All right, let's talk about why you're so tired. And let's talk about the exhaustion itself. Because most people, they hear the word tired and think you just need to rest, a small nap, a weekend away, maybe better boundaries. But this kind of exhaustion doesn't really go away with sleep, and you know it if you're in it. This is the exhaustion that comes from always being on, always watching, always adjusting, always trying to stay one step ahead of the next reaction. It's the exhaustion of scanning the room when your spouse walks in and immediately asking yourself, what version am I getting right now? It's the exhaustion of thinking through how to say or whether to say it at all because you don't know how it will land today. And over time, without you even realizing it, you're starting to organize your life around emotional safety. You choose your words carefully, you manage the timing of conversations, you avoid certain topics, and you shrink parts of yourself to keep the peace. And you guys, it's not because you're weak. It's not because you're passive. It's because you're trying to survive the relationship without blowing it up. And here's another part that often goes very unnoticed. It's the kind of exhaustion where you know you should get outside. You know it would probably help to see your friends. You know fresh air, laughter, movement, all the things that people suggest should be done. And yet you just can't make yourself go. And it's not because you don't want connection, but because every connection feels like effort now, because your system is already maxed out. Because the idea of being on for anyone else, even the people you love, feels really overwhelming. So you cancel, or you don't respond, or you tell yourself, maybe next time. And then you start to feel guilty for that as well, because you're not just managing their emotions, you're managing your own response to their emotions. You're calming yourself down, talking yourself out of reacting, telling yourself to be patient again. And that takes an enormous amount of energy. And when this goes on long enough, your body starts to carry it. You might notice you're tense even when things are fine. You feel emotionally numb or disconnected. You're irritable, foggy, or just depleted. Or you just don't recognize yourself anymore. And this isn't because you're doing something wrong. It's because your nervous system has been living on high alert for a very long time. And the hardest part, most people around you don't see it. They see your spouse's good side. They see how hard you're trying. They tell you to communicate better or to be more patient or to stop overthinking. But what they don't see is that invisible labor, the emotional load, the constant self regulation, the way you're holding both yourself and the relationship together. Anyone would be exhausted living like this. And if no one has said that to you yet, let me say this clearly. There is nothing wrong with you for feeling this way. There's another layer to this exhaustion that we don't talk about enough, and it's grief. Because somewhere along the way, you realized this isn't the marriage you thought you were building. When you said yes, you probably imagined partnership, mutual support, a sense that you'd be carrying life together. You expected hard seasons because all marriages have them, but you didn't expect to feel this emotional weight that lands mostly on you. You didn't expect to feel like you'd have to be the steady one all the time, the regulated one, the one who thinks ahead, de escalates, and absorbs the impact. Because when trauma is part of the picture, the rules quietly change. Suddenly, things that feel small to you feel huge to them. Normal stressors become threats. Everyday disagreements, they feel dangerous, not logically, but in the body. So instead of relating as two equals navigating life, you start compensating. You adjust, you anticipate, you carry more than your share, emotionally, mentally, and relationally. And at first, it feels loving. It feels like understanding, like compassion, like commitment. But over time, something shifts. You start to notice that your needs get postponed. Your feelings get minimized, even by you. Your voice gets quieter because it feels safer that way. And this is where the confusion really sets in because you love them. You understand their story. You see their pain. You feel their pain. So you tell yourself, it shouldn't feel this way. They've been through so much. I definitely don't want to make things worse. And yet, you feel lonely. You feel unseen. You feel like there's no room for your pain in the relationship. And that internal tug of war is exhausting. Loving someone deeply while grieving what you thought marriage would be creates a kind of sadness that's hard to name. It's not that you want out, it's that you want in a way that feels mutual and safe for both of you. And here's something really important I want you to hear. Feeling this grief doesn't mean you're ungrateful, and it doesn't mean you're selfish, and it doesn't mean you don't love your spouse enough. It means your heart knows something matters here. And when expectations and reality don't line up, it's okay to acknowledge the loss, even if you're still committed. Because ignoring that grief doesn't make it go away, it just drives it underground, where it turns into resentment, numbness, and burnout. And that, I promise you, is not where you want to live. To really understand why this dynamic feels so intense, we have to talk about trauma, not as a diagnosis or a label, but as a nervous system reality. Because trauma doesn't live in memory alone, it lives in the body. And I understand this in a whole new way because of something happened to me years ago. This was the moment where I really started to understand some of the things that I was seeing in my husband. I was out on a running trail with my two friends, Bree and Jenny. It was a normal run. We were chatting, moving at a steady pace, not really thinking about anything dangerous. And then suddenly we ran into a bear on the trail, and everything changed in an instant. Bree, she immediately went into fight mode. She got big and she was ready to fight. Now, Jenny, she went straight into flight mode and she turned around as fast as she could, and all you could see was the bottom of her hokas as she was running as far away as she could get. And me, I didn't know what I'd do, but I froze. I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. My body just stopped. And what was so striking to me after I looked at this situation was that it wasn't just the bear, it was how different our responses were. It was the same bear, it was the same moment, but three completely different reactions. And none of us chose how we would respond. There was no time to think. Our bodies decided for us. And that was the moment that something clicked for me, because this is what trauma does. When someone has lived through danger, unpredictability, or emotional threat early in life, their nervous system learns one thing really well: stay alert, look for danger, and be ready. That wiring does not just shut off because life looks safe now. So when my husband was constantly scanning for danger, anticipating problems, reacting strongly, staying on edge, he wasn't being dramatic. He wasn't trying to control things, and he definitely couldn't always explain it with words. His body was reacting as if there was a bear on the trail, even when there wasn't. And it was instinctual, it was deep, and it was automatic, just like my freeze response. And once I saw it that way, everything started to shift, because trauma doesn't ask, is this actually dangerous? It asks, does this feel similar to danger, familiar to danger? And when something feels familiar, criticism, conflict, loss of control, uncertainty, the body reacts before logic ever gets a vote. And that's why reactions can feel so sudden, why control, anger, shutdown, or withdraw show up so fast, and why it feels like you're suddenly dealing with a different person. But here's the part that matters just as much, and it often gets overlooked. When you live with someone whose nervous system is always scanning for danger, your nervous system adapts as well. You start anticipating, you start adjusting, you start trying to prevent the bear from showing up at all. So now it's not just one nervous system in survival mode, it's two. And two people in protection mode can't easily access connection. And that's why talking things through doesn't always work. That's why logic doesn't calm the moment. And that's why you feel stuck in the same cycles over and over again. And it's really important to say this clearly. Understanding trauma does not mean you're excusing harmful behavior. It does not mean ignoring your needs. And it does not mean you're supposed to disappear to keep the peace. Compassion and boundaries can exist at the same time. But when trauma is running the show, what looks like a relationship problem, which looks like a dishes problem, is often not at all about the situation that you're often talking about. It's often a regulation problem. So, two people reacting to perceived danger instead of relating from safety. So, if you've ever wondered, why does this feel so hard, even when we love each other? You guys, this is why. Now, I want to bring the focus back to you, because after understanding trauma and nervous systems and survival responses, there's often a quiet question underneath all of it. What does this say about me? And the answer is nothing bad. Your exhaustion makes sense. When you live in an environment where emotional safety feels unpredictable, your body adapts, just like your spouse's did. You become alert, you stay ready, you learn to respond quickly in shifts in tone, mood, or energy. And that's not weakness, that's intelligence. Your nervous system has been working overtime to keep the relationship stable, to keep conflict from escalating, to keep everyone safe. And that kind of constant regulation does come at a cost. It costs energy, it costs joy, and it costs ease. So if you feel tired, even when nothing bad is happening, if you feel on edge, even during calm moments, if your body doesn't fully relax anymore, that's not because you're broken. It's because your system has learned that calm doesn't always last. Your body has been carrying responsibility that was never meant to be carried alone. And here's something I really want you to hear. Exhaustion is not a sign that you're failing at marriage. It's a signal that you've been surviving inside it for a long time. And survival takes energy, a lot of it. Your body is simply telling the truth that something needs care, something needs support, and something needs to change. Not blame, not more effort, not more self sacrifice, just understanding. Because when you stop judging your exhaustion, you can start listening to it. And listening is where things begin to shift. If there's one thing I want you to take from this episode, it's this: you're not exhausted because you're bad at marriage. You're exhausted because trauma quietly turned your relationship into a survival environment, and no one can live in survival mode without paying a cost. Not emotionally, not physically, not relationally. You have been adapting. You have been compensating. You have been holding more than your share, often without language for it. And you guys, that doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. And this is where I want to say something I come back to again and again, because it changes everything when it really sinks in. It's not about you, and it's really not about him. It's about what happened to him. That doesn't erase responsibility, and it doesn't mean your pain doesn't matter, but it does shift the story from blame to understanding and from confusion to clarity. Because the more you understand about complex trauma and its effects, the better equipped you will be to help others, including the person you love, without losing yourself in the process. Understanding doesn't mean fixing, it doesn't mean excusing, and it doesn't mean carrying everything alone. It means you can stop reacting from confusion and start responding from clarity. So if you feel tired, foggy, withdrawn, or unsure of yourself lately, please don't use that as evidence that something is wrong with you. Use it as information. Your body is asking for safety. Your heart is asking for space. And your exhaustion is asking to be understood, not pushed through. Nothing needs to be fixed today. You guys, this episode isn't about solutions. It's about clarity. Because when you understand why things feel so hard, you can stop blaming yourself. And that alone can change everything. Now, in the next episode, we're going to talk about what's actually happening inside your spouse when things escalate and how understanding that can help you respond differently without abandoning yourself. And then in the final episode of this series, I'm going to be sitting down with Dr. Kelly Flanagan, whose new book, The Road Less Triggered, is coming out this very month. And we're going to get deep in triggers, nervous systems, and how couples can move from protection back to connection in real, practical human ways. So if this episode put words to something you've been carrying for a long time, or someone you know has been carrying for a long time, I hope you'll stay with me for the rest of the series and share it with others who need it. You don't have to figure this out alone, and you don't have to disappear to make your marriage work. Thank you so much for being here, and I will see you next week.
All right, that's a wrap for today on Love and Trauma, the real deal. Big thanks to my guests for sharing their insights. Couldn't have done it without you. Now, for those of you looking to take this journey further, I've got something special. Head to my website to grab Real Tactics, Real Healing, a survivor's playbook for navigating a relationship with a trauma survivor. It's packed with everything you need to know, do, and say to navigate the emotional minefield, find your balance, and regain your self-worth and happiness.